Let's dive right in. We're talking about the high-altitude desert of Ladakh, a place that for many of us is a serene, almost mythical paradise. But right now, beneath that stunning beauty, a powerful protest movement is brewing, one that's challenging the very future of the region. So what's really going on? That's what we're here to break down. If you want to get a real feel for the tension on the ground, just look at this number. Not too long ago, a recruitment drive was held for just 534 government jobs. Over 51,000 people applied. Now that's not just a statistic, It's a glaring symbol of the deep economic anxiety that is fueling so much of the current unrest. Okay, so what is this protest really all about? Well, it's being led by a coalition of civil society groups from both of Ladakh's districts, Leh and Kargil, and they've put some very specific, very direct demands on the table for the central government. And they're not being vague, their demands are crystal clear. First, they want full-fledged statehood, which would give them their own legislature. Second, they're demanding inclusion in the 6th schedule of the Constitution. We'll get into what that means in a bit, but think major autonomy. And finally, circling right back to that jobs number we saw, they want their own public service commission and job reservations for local Ladakhi youth. Now this is a statement from activist Sonam Wangchuk that absolutely went viral, and it's incredibly controversial. Some people see it as a dangerous comment that touches a raw nerve on national security, but his supporters say, no, you're missing the point. They argue it's a cry of desperation, a way to show just how alienated and ignored people feel. It really captures the depth of the frustration there. And this is where the story gets really interesting and kind of ironic. For decades, Ladakhis fought tooth and nail to be separated from Jammu and Kashmir. So the big question is, why, after finally getting that dream in 2019, are they now protesting the very system they asked for? I mean, just look at this timeline. It's pretty wild because it shows you just how dramatically things have flipped. Go all the way back to 1949, and you've got Ladakhi leaders asking for direct rule from the central government. They were afraid of being marginalized. Fast forward to 2019, they get their wish. Union territory status, and there were huge celebrations in the streets. But just a few years later, that sentiment has done a complete 180. The crucial question is, what changed? Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, isn't there any local democracy? And it's a fair question because it's not like local government vanished. They have these elected bodies called Hill Development Councils for both Leh and Kargil. So if those exist, what's the big deal? Well, the problem isn't the existence of these councils, it's about the lack of real, meaningful power. And to understand that, we need to go a bit deeper. We have to look at Ladakh's incredibly unique identity and the very real fears that have started to bubble up since 2019. This isn't just about politics. It's about culture, the environment, and for many, survival. All right, quick thought experiment. When I say the word Ladakh, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's probably Buddhist monks, those incredible monasteries perched on cliffs, right? Well, the reality on the ground is actually a bit more complex, and it might surprise you. Ladakh's largest religious community is Muslim at almost 47%, followed closely by Buddhists at around 40%. It's not a monolith at all. It's a genuine melting pot of cultures shaped by centuries of trade and history. And here's another really crucial layer to all this. Despite that religious diversity, what really unifies the region is that a whopping 97% of the population is classified as tribal. This shared tribal identity is absolutely fundamental to why they're demanding special constitutional protections. So, what are people actually afraid of? Well, since becoming a union territory without a legislature of its own, many locals feel like they've lost control. They're worried their land will be sold off to outside corporations, that massive new projects will wreck their incredibly fragile ecosystem, that good jobs will be even harder to find, and that, over time, an influx of outsiders could make them a minority in their own homeland. And we have to remember, all of this is playing out in one of the most strategically sensitive places on the entire planet. Ladakh isn't just a postcard-perfect landscape. It's a critical border region, sandwiched right between China and Pakistan. Any instability there is a huge national security concern. And look, this isn't just some abstract, far-off threat. A police research paper, which was submitted at a major national conference, pointed out that India has lost access to 26 of its 65 regular patrolling points in eastern Ladakh. Now, the military hasn't officially said these points have been ceded to China, but it just goes to show you how incredibly tense and volatile that border really is. So this is where you see two totally legitimate priorities just crashing into each other. From a national security point of view, you absolutely need to build roads and infrastructure fast to move troops and counter any expansionism. But from the local, ecological point of view, that exact same construction threatens their water, their land, and their entire way of life in an ecosystem that's already getting hammered by climate change. Okay, so that's the problem in a nutshell. It's big, it's complicated. So, what about solutions? Well, the demands from the protesters are clear, but the path forward is anything but, filled with all sorts of constitutional hurdles and really tough questions. Let's break down their key constitutional demand, because this table really clarifies everything. The fifth schedule offers some protection for tribal areas, but the governing body is mostly just advisory. The sixth schedule, on the other hand, creates these powerful autonomous district councils. They're basically states within a state, with real legislative, executive, and even judicial powers over things like land and local governance. It's the difference between having a voice and having real authority. But, and this is a big but, is the sixth schedule really a magic bullet? Probably not. Even with those powers, any law passed by an autonomous council would still need the green light from the governor, who's appointed by the central government. So if a local law clashes with, say, a national security project, it could still get vetoed. It's just not a simple fix. So what other ideas are floating around? Well, people are looking at some really interesting models. You could try something like Bhutan, which focuses on high-value, low-impact tourism by charging a daily fee. Or you could look to Denmark with its community-owned wind and solar projects that create green jobs. And of course, there's huge potential right at home in promoting local, sustainable brands like Looms of Ladakh. And that, of course, brings us to the elephant in the room, money. Right now, as a union territory, most of Ladakh's bills are paid by the central government. If it were to become a full-fledged state, it would have to generate a lot more of its own revenue. It's a really tough question with no easy answer, and it's a major factor in this whole statehood debate. So, this is where we'll leave it. This is the fundamental challenge, the core dilemma of the whole situation. It's a delicate, high-stakes balancing act between the undeniable need to secure a strategic national border and the equally vital need to protect the culture, the environment, and the identity of the people who call that very border home. Finding that balance is the only real path forward.